The first ancient wolf opened its eyes before she even reached the first gravestone. A slow breath escaped from stone lungs that had not moved in 8 centuries. Then another pair of silver eyes opened. Then another. Then another. Across the moonlit cemetery, colossal wolves carved from mountain rock awakened one by one, lifting their massive heads toward the smallest figure standing among their graves. Spears slipped from trembling soldiers' hands. The mountain itself seemed to inhale. On the ridge, overlooking the valley, Alpha King Kaelen Thorn did not move. He had witnessed battles that turned rivers red, had watched entire packs kneel beneath his command, yet nothing had prepared him for this. Every child in Moonveil Dominion had grown up hearing one ancient law. The wolves only awaken when the moon chooses its final guardian. No one had believed that day would ever come. Least of all for an Omega. A terrified whisper spread across the valley. But she's only an Omega. The wind carried the scent of frost through the silver pines as Lyra Ashvale climbed the narrow path toward the forbidden cemetery. The villagers believed no living soul should walk there after sunset. Mothers pulled their children indoors whenever the full moon rose over the valley, warning them that the dead could still hear careless footsteps. Lyra had heard those stories since she was old enough to understand fear. Yet she came anyway, not because she was fearless, because she had nowhere else that felt like home. Her worn cloak fluttered behind her as she reached the weathered stone gate. Moss covered the faded carvings of wolves running beneath a crescent moon. The iron hinges groaned softly when she pushed them open, though no one had touched them for weeks. Inside, silence greeted her like an old friend. Thousands of enormous stone wolves rested across the hillside, each sculpted with astonishing care. Some stood proudly upon great pedestals. Others lay curled as though sleeping beneath blankets of autumn leaves. Moonlight painted silver across their ancient faces. Lyra smiled faintly. "I came back," she whispered. Her voice disappeared into the quiet valley. She carried a small basket filled with white mountain flowers gathered during the afternoon. Most villagers would never waste beautiful blossoms on forgotten graves. Lyra always did. She walked slowly between the monuments, stopping beside a weathered wolf whose nose had chipped away centuries ago. "You still look grumpy," she murmured, brushing leaves from its paws. She placed flowers beside the statue. "I brought the white ones this time. I know they're your favorite." The words sounded foolish. She knew that. Stone wolves did not have favorite flowers. Stone wolves did not listen. Yet speaking to them somehow eased the loneliness that clung to her heart. When her parents disappeared after being branded traitors, the village had slowly stopped speaking to her. Children crossed the road to avoid her. Adults lowered their voices whenever she approached. Only here did silence feel gentle instead of cruel. As she continued through the cemetery, tiny movements disturbed the corner of her vision. Something white darted between 2 monuments. Lyra stopped. The bushes rustled. A small wolf pup emerged. Its fur shimmered like fresh snow beneath the moonlight. Bright silver eyes watched her with unusual intelligence. She blinked. "I didn't know pups wandered this far." The little wolf tilted its head. It neither growled nor retreated. Instead, it walked directly toward her. Most wild wolves avoided strangers. This one gently pressed its warm nose against her hand. Lyra laughed quietly. "So you're lonely too." She scratched behind its ears. The pup closed its eyes with obvious contentment before trotting ahead, looking back every few steps as if inviting her to follow. "You've decided we're friends already?" The tiny wolf answered by wagging its tail once. Lyra followed. They wandered deeper into the cemetery than she had ever dared before. The oldest monuments towered above her like silent mountains. Their surfaces were smoother than the newer statues, untouched by cracks despite the passing centuries. The air suddenly changed. The breeze stopped. Every leaf became perfectly still. Even the insects fell silent. Lyra frowned. Something felt different. The little white pup sat down. Its ears lifted. Its gaze fixed upon the largest wolf statue standing at the center of the cemetery. A strange vibration traveled beneath Lyra's boots. At first she thought it was distant thunder. Then the ground trembled again. Dust drifted from the giant stone wolf's shoulders. A deep sound echoed through the valley. Not a growl. A breath. The impossible breath of something that should have been lifeless. Lyra stared. "No!" Another breath followed. The enormous stone chest slowly expanded. Cracks of silver moonlight spread beneath the carved surface like veins awakening after endless sleep. Then, two immense silver eyes opened. The world stopped. Lyra's basket slipped from her fingers. White flowers scattered across the cold earth. The colossal wolf lowered its massive head. Its ancient eyes did not look toward the mountains, nor the moon, nor the distant castle. They looked only at her. Across the cemetery another statue moved. Stone scraped against stone. A second pair of glowing eyes awakened. Then a third, then dozens, then hundreds. All across the sacred valley, gigantic wolves lifted their heads in eerie unison. The mountains shook beneath their awakening. Far above, soldiers stationed along the cliffs cried out in panic. The cemetery! The wolves! They're alive! On the highest ridge, Alpha King Kaelen Thorn pulled his black stallion to a sudden halt. His guards stared in disbelief. "My king!" one whispered. Kaelen did not answer. His sharp gray eyes remained fixed upon the lone Omega standing among the awakening giants. His father had died seeking the truth hidden within that cemetery. For 20 years Kaelen had believed its secrets were buried forever. Yet tonight, every impossible legend stood breathing before him. Not because an Alpha had entered, not because a king had commanded it, because one forgotten Omega had carried flowers into the valley. Back below, Lyra found herself unable to move. Fear urged her to run, yet something stronger held her still. The enormous wolves were not staring with hunger. They were watching her with recognition, as though they had been waiting for one person, waiting for one voice. The eldest wolf slowly leaned forward. Its eyes shimmered brighter than the moon itself. Its ancient mouth opened. For a heartbeat the entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath. Then the giant whispered in a voice older than memory. "Moon! Daughter!" Every wolf lowered its head, and somewhere beneath the cemetery, hidden beneath 800 years of silence, something vast began to awaken. The sacred cemetery had recognized Lyra, but the greater mystery had only begun. As the Alpha King rode toward the valley, and the ancient wolves bowed before a forgotten Omega, one question echoed through every heart in Moonveil Dominion. Why had the guardians of 8 centuries been waiting for her? The whisper of Moon Daughter lingered in the cold air long after the ancient wolf had fallen silent. Lyra could neither breathe nor think. Hundreds of colossal wolves remained perfectly still, their glowing silver eyes fixed upon her. They did not growl. They did not advance. Yet their attention felt heavier than mountains. The little white pup quietly pressed against her ankle. Its warm fur grounded her trembling heart. What are you?" she whispered. The pup simply blinked before sitting proudly beside her, as though it had always belonged there. A distant horn shattered the silence. One blast, then another. Royal horns. Their echoes rolled across the valley. The soldiers stationed above the cemetery finally found enough courage to move. Dozens hurried down the winding stone path, though none dared step through the cemetery gates. Every warrior had heard the old warning. No weapon shall cross the resting place of the first pack. The law was older than the kingdom itself. Heavy footsteps approached behind them. The soldiers immediately knelt. "My king!" Kaelen Thorn walked past them without acknowledging their greetings. His dark cloak drifted behind him in the icy wind, and moonlight reflected from the silver markings embroidered across his armor. Though still young for an Alpha King, his calm presence silenced even frightened warriors. He stopped before the ancient gate. His gray eyes studied Lyra. She looked nothing like the danger the council's old prophecies described. She was small. Her cloak was patched in several places. Her boots were worn from years of walking mountain trails. Flowers still lay scattered around her feet where the basket had fallen. Not exactly the image of someone capable of awakening 8 centuries of legends. Kaelen's gaze shifted toward the enormous wolves. Every single one remained awake, watching, waiting. He slowly crossed the threshold. The instant his boot touched the sacred ground, a deep growl rolled through the cemetery. Not from one wolf, from every wolf. The earth vibrated beneath him. Soldiers instinctively reached for their swords. Kaelen raised one hand without looking back. "No." His voice remained steady. "No weapons." The growling faded slightly, though the ancient wolves did not lower their heads. Kaelen continued walking, step after careful step. He had entered battlefields where thousands wanted him dead. Yet nothing compared to standing beneath the gaze of creatures that had witnessed kingdoms rise and fall. Finally, he stopped a few paces from Lyra. Neither spoke immediately. The silence stretched between them. "You should leave," Lyra said quietly, unable to meet his eyes. "They'll blame me." Kaelen studied her expression. There was fear, confusion, not the slightest hint of pride. "You didn't expect this." It was not a question. She shook her head. "I only came to bring flowers." The answer was so simple that Kaelen believed it instantly. Behind them, hurried footsteps climbed the hill. Lady Seraphine emerged with several council nobles, her jeweled robes completely unsuited for the rocky path. The moment she saw the awakened wolves, every trace of color vanished from her face. "This," she whispered, "this cannot be happening." Her shock lasted only a heartbeat before anger replaced it. She pointed directly at Lyra. "Seize the girl." None of the soldiers moved. Seraphine glared. "Did you not hear my command?" One captain swallowed hard. "My lady, no one wishes to enter." "Cowards!" She looked toward Kaelen. "Your Majesty, arrest the Omega immediately. Whatever she has done is forbidden." Kaelen did not answer. Instead, he looked toward the nearest ancient wolf. "If she has committed a crime," his calm voice echoed through the valley, "then let the guardians judge first." The council exchanged uneasy glances. Kaelen took one more step toward the largest wolf. Slowly, he bowed. It was the traditional greeting reserved for the founders of Moonveil Dominion. Nothing happened. The giant wolf simply stared. Kaelen waited. Still nothing. Lady Seraphine smirked. "You see, even sleeping statues refuse childish rituals." Then Lyra instinctively stepped beside him. She had not intended to. She merely wished to stop the growing argument. The moment her foot touched the earth beside the Alpha King, every ancient wolf lowered its head. Hundreds of gigantic stone guardians bowed together. The sound thundered through the valley. Stone scraping against stone echoed like distant avalanches. Gasps erupted from every soldier. Several nobles stumbled backward. One old healer fell to his knees in tears. "It cannot be!" Kaelen slowly lifted his eyes. The wolves had ignored their king. Yet they bowed to the Omega beside him. Not one. All of them. The little white pup trotted happily between the colossal guardians before sitting proudly beside Lyra once more. Its tiny tail swept across the grass, as if this extraordinary miracle were the most ordinary thing in the world. Lady Seraphine's breathing quickened. "This is witchcraft." "No," murmured Rowan, the young beta captain standing near the gate. His voice carried genuine awe. "I think they've chosen." The word spread through the gathered crowd like wildfire. Chosen. An Omega. Impossible. The very idea threatened centuries of tradition. Seraphine's expression hardened. "If the wolves choose Omegas over Alphas, every law protecting this kingdom collapses." Kaelen looked at her without anger. "Then perhaps the laws deserve questioning." The sentence struck harder than any blade. Even Rowan stared at his king in surprise. Kaelen had not defended Lyra. Not exactly. He had defended the truth standing before them. And truth could not be ignored. Suddenly, the ground trembled again. This time the vibration came from beneath their feet. A low grinding sound echoed through the cemetery. Dust burst upward between the oldest graves. The little white pup immediately sprang to its feet. Its ears stood perfectly upright. It barked once, a sharp, urgent sound unlike anything it had made before. The largest ancient wolf turned its head toward the center of the cemetery. Its glowing eyes brightened. Stone shifted. Cracks raced across an enormous circular platform hidden beneath centuries of moss. Everyone watched as the earth slowly separated. An ancient staircase emerged from the darkness below. Cold air escaped from beneath the mountain. It carried the scent of forgotten ages. The first hidden chamber had opened. No one spoke. No one dared move. Then Elder Asterian's ancient voice echoed through the valley once more. "The first truth waits below." As the hidden staircase descended into darkness beneath the wolf cemetery, the awakened guardians remained bowed before Lyra alone. The Alpha King realized the path ahead would not merely uncover forgotten history, it would decide whether the very foundation of Moonveil Dominion had been built upon a lie. The stone staircase seemed to descend forever. Cold air drifted upward from the darkness beneath the cemetery, carrying the scent of damp earth, ancient cedar, and something older, something untouched by time itself. No one moved. Even the wind had fallen silent. The colossal wolves remained kneeling, their silver eyes illuminating the entrance like living torches. Kaelen was the first to speak. "No one enters alone." His voice was calm, yet carried the weight of command. Lady Seraphine stepped forward immediately. "Your Majesty, this is madness. Seal the entrance before whatever curse lives below escapes." Kaelen never looked at her. If the founders wished this place sealed forever, they would not have opened it. "They opened it for her," Seraphine hissed, glaring at Lyra. "And that is precisely why she must be removed." Lyra lowered her eyes. The hatred in the noblewoman's voice felt painfully familiar. It was the same hatred she had endured her entire life. The hatred reserved for Omegas who forgot their place. Before she could step away, she felt something soft brush against her hand. "Ash!" The little white wolf gently nudged her fingers before climbing onto the first stone step. He looked back once, waiting. Kaelen noticed. "He wants us to follow." Lyra hesitated. "What if he's leading us somewhere dangerous?" Kaelen answered without taking his eyes off the pup. "Then he believes we'll survive it." It was the first time anyone had spoken of the little wolf, as if his choices carried meaning. Lyra found herself smiling despite the fear tightening her chest. Together, they descended. Rowan and 6 carefully chosen royal guards followed several steps behind, while Lady Seraphine remained at the entrance, refusing to hide her growing frustration. Torchlight soon gave way to an eerie silver glow. The walls themselves shimmered. Thousands of tiny crystals embedded in the stone reflected the moonlight filtering through hidden cracks above, making the tunnels appear like rivers of frozen stars. Ash trotted confidently ahead. He never once hesitated, almost as if he had walked these halls countless times before. After several minutes, the passage widened into an enormous underground chamber. Lyra stopped breathing. The room was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Towering stone pillars stretched toward a ceiling hidden in darkness. Between them stood dozens of carved statues, not wolves this time, but men and women wearing ancient armor. Some carried swords, others carried staffs. A few held children in their arms. At the center of the chamber stood a circular mosaic depicting 7 enormous wolves surrounding a single human figure. Not an alpha, not a king, an Omega woman. Her cloak resembled Lyra's own. She knelt with one hand resting upon the head of the largest wolf, while moonlight poured from the sky above them. Rowan stared in disbelief. "That's impossible." Kaelen stepped closer. "The kingdom's oldest history says the first king united the wolves." Lyra slowly approached the mosaic. This says something different. She brushed centuries of dust away with trembling fingers. More details appeared. The wolves were not kneeling before the king. The king was kneeling beside the Omega. Neither ruled the other. They stood as equals. Kaelen's expression darkened. "Our histories never mentioned this." "No," Lyra whispered. "They erased it." Ash suddenly barked. A single sharp sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone turned. The little wolf stood before another wall completely covered in faded murals. Unlike the polished mosaic, these paintings had been deliberately scratched and damaged. Someone had tried very hard to destroy them. Lyra carefully examined the remaining images. Though broken, enough survived to tell a story. She saw villages consumed by fire, children fleeing through forests, enormous wolves protecting frightened families. And always, Omega healers walked beside them. Not behind them, not beneath them, beside them. Further along the wall another image remained almost untouched. A group of nobles stood beneath black banners. One held a scroll over an open fire. Behind them, soldiers hammered new symbols over older carvings. History itself was being rewritten. Kaelen's jaw tightened. So this wasn't forgotten. It was stolen. Silence settled heavily across the chamber. For years Kaelen had devoted himself to protecting traditions passed down through generations. Now those traditions suddenly felt uncertain. Built upon foundations someone had intentionally buried. Rowan slowly removed his helmet. "My king!" His voice shook. "If this reaches the council." "It will," Kaelen replied quietly. "No matter the cost." Lyra looked toward him in surprise. "You believe this?" Kaelen met her eyes. "I believe what I've seen, not what I was told." The simple answer carried more comfort than she expected. For the first time since childhood, someone powerful had chosen truth instead of convenience. Ash began pawing at the floor. His tiny claws scraped repeatedly against one particular stone. Lyra knelt beside him. "What is it?" The stone looked ordinary, until she noticed a tiny crescent moon carved into one corner. She pressed it gently. A deep click echoed beneath the floor. Hidden gears rumbled. An entire section of the wall slowly slid aside. Cold air escaped from the newly opened chamber. Inside rested a single stone pedestal. Upon it lay an old silver pendant shaped like intertwined wolves beneath a crescent moon. Lyra gasped. Her hands trembled before she even touched it. She knew that pendant, not because she had ever worn it, because she had seen it every night in her dreams. Small fingers brushing against polished silver. A woman's warm laugh. A gentle voice saying, "If we are ever separated, follow the wolves." Tears blurred her vision. No! She reached forward carefully. The moment her fingers touched the pendant, warmth spread through her hand. A memory flashed across her mind. A woman with silver eyes smiling. Strong hands fastening the pendant around her own neck. A kiss upon her forehead. Then darkness. The vision vanished. Lyra staggered backward. Kaelen caught her before she fell. What happened? She looked down at the pendant resting in her palm. "My mother!" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "This belonged to my mother." The chamber fell silent once more. Even the guard seemed afraid to breathe. If Lyra's mother's pendant had been hidden beneath the sacred cemetery for centuries, then one impossible question rose above every other mystery. Why had the founders protected the memory of a woman history claimed was nothing more than a traitor? Far above them, unnoticed by anyone below, Lady Seraphine watched the tunnel entrance with cold determination. She slowly turned toward one of her loyal guards. "Burn every archive." The guard hesitated. "My lady, if the truth has awakened," her eyes hardened, "then we bury it again." As Lyra clutched her mother's pendant, hidden memories stirred for the first time in years. Deep within the ancient tunnels, one forgotten truth had already surfaced, but above the cemetery, powerful hands were racing to destroy every remaining piece of the kingdom's real history before dawn. The silver pendant rested in Lyra's trembling hands. Though centuries of dust had coated the hidden chamber, the pendant itself looked untouched by time. The intertwined wolves engraved upon its surface shimmered faintly beneath the strange moonlight filtering through cracks high above. Kaelen watched her carefully. He had seen warriors collapse beneath wounds that would kill ordinary men. He had seen grieving mothers refuse to shed tears until every child had been buried. But the expression crossing Lyra's face now was different. This was not fear. It was recognition. "You've seen it before," he said quietly. Lyra swallowed. "In dreams." Her voice cracked. "I thought they were only dreams." She slowly closed her fingers around the pendant. "I remember my mother's hands. Only pieces, never her face. Every time I tried to remember, it disappeared." Ash padded toward her and gently rested his tiny head against her knee. The simple gesture steadied her breathing. For the first time since she had entered the cemetery, she no longer felt completely alone. Suddenly, the enormous chamber trembled, not violently, almost gently, as though the mountain itself had acknowledged the pendant's return. The towering statues surrounding them slowly lowered their stone heads. Not all the way, only enough to resemble respectful bows. Rowan stared upward. "They're greeting her." Kaelen remained silent. He had stopped trying to explain the impossible. The impossible had become the only truth left. Without warning, a deep voice echoed across the chamber. "So!" The single word rolled through the cavern like distant thunder. "You have returned." Every torch flickered. Every crystal embedded within the walls brightened. The largest statue at the far end of the chamber slowly came to life. Stone cracked away from its shoulders. Silver light flowed beneath weathered rock. The immense wolf opened ancient eyes older than kingdoms. Asterion, leader of the first pack. His massive head lowered until his eyes met Lyra's. There was no anger in them, only endless patience. "You carry her heart." Lyra instinctively clutched the pendant. My mother's." Asterion slowly nodded. "Your mother's promise." The chamber became utterly silent. Kaelen stepped forward. "Elder!" His voice carried both respect and caution. The kingdom teaches that Lyra's parents betrayed Moonveil Dominion. Asterian's gaze shifted toward the Alpha King. The kingdom remembers lies. The words struck harder than steel. Rowan lowered his head. Several guards exchanged uneasy glances. Centuries of history suddenly felt fragile. Lyra gathered enough courage to ask the question that had haunted her since childhood. My parents. Her voice barely escaped her lips. Were they traitors? The ancient wolf closed his eyes. When he spoke again, sorrow filled every word. No. The single answer shattered 20 years of pain. Tears rolled silently down Lyra's face. They were guardians. Images suddenly appeared across the chamber walls. Not painted, living. Silver moonlight spread over the ancient murals until they moved like memories awakened from sleep. Everyone watched in silence. A young woman with silver eyes stood beside enormous wolves. Her smile matched the warmth Lyra had always imagined. Beside her stood a tall warrior carrying the royal crest. Neither wore a crown. Neither commanded the wolves. Instead, the wolves walked beside them, protecting them, trusting them. They guarded the moon heart, Asterian continued, the source of harmony between wolves and mankind. The vision shifted. Dark-robed nobles enter the sacred chamber carrying black banners. Their faces hidden, their voices angry. They desired power without responsibility. They feared those who led through compassion. They feared Omegas. The memories became darker. Books burned. Murals shattered. Names vanished from stone. Children cried as soldiers dragged innocent families away. Finally, the vision stopped upon one heartbreaking image. Lyra's parents stood at the entrance to this very chamber. Her mother knelt before a sleeping wolf while holding a small child wrapped in white cloth. Lyra. Her father kissed the child's forehead. Then both parents turned toward the darkness, not running, choosing, sacrificing. They left willingly, Asterian said softly. Not to abandon you, to protect you. Lyra collapsed to her knees. For years she had believed she had simply not been worth staying for. Every lonely birthday, every winter night, every whispered insult, she had blamed herself. Now the truth felt almost too heavy to carry. They loved you, Asterian continued, until their final breath. Kaelen quietly knelt beside her. He said nothing. No comforting speeches, no empty promises. He simply placed his cloak across her shoulders as the cold mountain air settled around them. The gesture spoke louder than words. Lyra looked at him through tear-filled eyes. Thank you, he answered with a slight nod. No child should carry another person's lie. For a long moment, neither looked away. Respect quietly became trust. Trust quietly became something deeper neither was ready to name. Ash curled into Lyra's lap. The tiny wolf gave a soft whine before licking away one of her tears. She laughed through her crying. I know. I'm trying. Asterian watched them patiently. Then his expression hardened. The truth awakens. So does danger. At that exact moment, far above the mountain, thick black smoke began rising into the night sky. Rowan rushed toward the tunnel entrance. My king! A frightened messenger stumbled into the chamber, covered in soot and ash. He could barely catch his breath. The royal archives. His voice shook. They're burning. Kaelen's eyes narrowed instantly. How? The fire started in every record hall at once. Another messenger arrived seconds later. His face was pale with terror. There is more. The council has summoned every regional alpha. They claim the cemetery has corrupted the throne. Rowan cursed under his breath. They're starting a rebellion. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. Lady Seraphine had made her move. She had failed to bury the truth beneath stone. Now she intended to bury it beneath fear. Asterian slowly lifted his massive head. His ancient voice echoed throughout the underground hall. The greatest battles are never fought for power. He looked directly at Lyra. They are fought for memory. The crystals overhead dimmed. The visions faded. Only darkness remained. Above them, war was already beginning. Ending Hook. As flames consumed the royal archives and noble houses rallied against the Alpha King, Lyra finally learned that her parents had never betrayed the kingdom. They had sacrificed everything to protect it. But before she could mourn the years stolen from her, the truth itself became the most dangerous thing in Moonveil Dominion, and every road now led toward a trial that would decide the future of every pack. By sunrise, the bells of Moonveil Dominion rang without pause. Not for celebration, not for mourning, for judgment. Across the 7 great packs, messengers rode through mountain passes carrying sealed royal summons. Every alpha, every beta captain, every high healer, and every council elder was ordered to gather within the Crescent Court before sunset. Rumors spread faster than horses. Some claimed an Omega had cursed the sacred cemetery. Others whispered that the ancient wolves had declared the end of the Alpha bloodline. The truth became harder to recognize with every passing hour. Within the royal castle, servants hurried through long stone corridors carrying bundles of ancient banners while guards doubled their watch around every entrance. No one knew whom to trust anymore. Lyra stood quietly beside a narrow window overlooking the capital. The city below looked peaceful. Children chased each other through market streets. Bakers opened warm ovens. Blacksmiths hammered glowing steel. Life continued. Yet beneath that ordinary morning, fear spread like cracks beneath frozen water. Ash lay curled at her feet. The little white wolf had refused to leave her side since the cemetery awakened. Every few moments, he lifted his head toward the palace doors, ears twitching. Watching. Listening. Waiting. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Kaelen entered. He had removed his ceremonial armor. Instead, he wore a simple black cloak over plain leather garments, looking less like a king, and more like the warrior he had once been. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Kaelen walked toward the window. The council has already decided how today's trial should end. Lyra looked down. They'll exile me. They want more than exile. His calm voice never changed. They want everyone to believe you are the enemy. She nodded slowly. I know. The words carried no bitterness, only exhaustion. I've spent my whole life being someone's mistake. Kaelen looked at her. No. His answer came immediately. You spent your life carrying someone else's lies. The room fell silent again. Lyra smiled faintly. You always know the right thing to say. Kaelen almost smiled in return. I usually don't. A quiet laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It was the first genuine laugh she had shared in years. Ash immediately stood and nudged Kaelen's hand with his nose. The Alpha King looked down. The little wolf examined him carefully before giving one small approving wag of his tail. Lyra raised an eyebrow. I think he likes you. I hope that's a good sign. Ash barked softly. For reasons neither understood, the simple moment eased the heaviness between them. Trust had begun to grow, not through grand declarations, but through shared silence. The Crescent Court overflowed long before sunset. Thousands filled the enormous stone arena carved into the mountainside. Regional alphas occupied elevated seats beneath their pack banners. Beta stood behind them. Warriors lined the outer walls. Ordinary villagers crowded every remaining space. At the center stood a single circular platform. Lyra's place. Across from it rested the Alpha King's throne. Above both hung the ancient moon banner, the oldest symbol of Moonveil Dominion. Lady Seraphine stepped forward first. Her crimson robes swept across the polished stone floor. She spoke loudly enough for every corner of the court to hear. For 8 centuries our kingdom has survived because every wolf knew their place. Her voice echoed proudly. Yesterday an Omega entered the sacred cemetery. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The dead awakened. They rejected our traditions. They rejected our laws. Her finger pointed directly toward Lyra. Ask yourselves one question. If this girl remains free, what becomes of every pack? Several nobles immediately shouted, Chaos! The end of the throne! The moon has abandoned us! Fear spread quickly through the gathering, exactly as Seraphine intended. Then Kaelen rose from his throne. Silence returned instantly. He descended the stone steps slowly. No royal guards followed him. No servants announced him. He walked alone, stopping beside Lyra instead of above her. The gesture stunned the court. Lady Seraphine's expression tightened. My king! Kaelen raised one hand. Yesterday, his voice remained calm. Every one of you witnessed something no living soul has ever seen. No one interrupted. You saw the ancient wolves awaken. Heads nodded. You saw them ignore me. The silence deepened. You saw them bow. He turned toward Lyra. Not to a crown. To character. The words struck the arena harder than thunder. Several alphas shifted uneasily. One elderly healer quietly lowered her head. Kaelen continued, I ask none of you to believe stories. I ask you to believe your own eyes. Before Lady Seraphine could answer, the sky darkened. Clouds rolled across the full moon. A cold wind swept through the arena. Then, a single ancient howl echoed across the mountains. Every person froze. Another howl answered. Then another. Hundreds. The sound surrounded the capital. From every direction, the crowd turned toward the distant cemetery. One by one, the colossal wolves appeared upon the mountain ridges, not attacking, walking, majestic, silent, ancient. Thousands gasped together. The legendary guardians enter the capital for the first time in 800 years. Children stopped crying. Warriors lowered their weapons. Even the proudest alphas instinctively bowed their heads. Asterion walked at the front. His enormous silver eyes surveyed the entire court. Finally, he stopped directly behind Lyra. Without command, without hesitation, every awakened wolf formed a great circle around her, protecting her, not imprisoning her, choosing her. The image stole every voice from the arena. No speech could compete with what the kingdom now witnessed. Lady Seraphine's confidence finally cracked. This! She stepped backward. This cannot decide the law. Asterion slowly lifted his ancient head. His voice rolled across the mountains. For centuries, you asked who was worthy to lead. His silver eyes settled upon Lyra. You asked the wrong question. A long silence followed. The moon never chooses the strongest. It chooses the one who protects the weakest. The entire kingdom stood speechless. Even the wind seemed unwilling to interrupt. Then suddenly, a terrified scream erupted from the northern gate. Smoke rose beyond the palace walls. Steel clashed against steel. A wounded scout stumbled into the arena. My king! He collapsed to one knee. The eastern nobles have raised their banners. They're marching on the capital. Panic exploded through the crowd. War had begun. As the ancient wolves publicly chose Lyra before the eyes of the entire kingdom, the final illusion of the old order shattered. But while truth won the hearts of the people, Lady Seraphine had already unleashed rebellion, and before the night was over, Asterion revealed one final warning that froze even the Alpha King. The last guardian has not yet awakened. The first arrow struck before the warning bell had finished ringing. From the palace walls, soldiers watched black banners emerge from the eastern forests like a spreading storm. Hundreds of armored warriors poured across the valley, carrying the crests of noble houses that had secretly pledged themselves to Lady Seraphine. The rebellion had begun. Panic swept through the Crescent Court. Families hurried to gather their children. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Young warriors reached instinctively for their swords. Only the ancient wolves remained perfectly still. Their glowing silver eyes followed Asterion as he stepped forward, his enormous paws echoing against the stone courtyard. The final hour, he rumbled, has arrived. Kaelen drew his sword, not to threaten the people, but to defend them. His voice cut cleanly through the chaos. Every civilian inside the palace, warriors to the western gate, healers to the lower halls. No one questioned him. Even those who had doubted their king only moments before obeyed without hesitation. Leadership was no longer measured by authority. It was measured by calm. Lyra stood frozen as the city erupted around her. Ash nudged her ankle. His silver eyes were fixed, not on the battle, but on the palace itself. The little wolf barked once, then ran, straight toward the ancient royal keep. Lyra looked after him. He's trying to show us something. Kaelen nodded immediately. Then we follow. Rowan gathered a small escort while the remaining guards rushed to defend the walls. As they crossed the palace courtyard, distant clashes of steel echoed through the capital. Smoke climbed into the evening sky while frightened wolves howled from every corner of the city. The rebellion had reached the gates. Yet Ash never looked back. He led them through forgotten corridors beneath the palace, descending narrow staircases untouched for generations. Dust covered every surface. Ancient murals lined the walls, depicting wolves surrounding a radiant moon suspended above the kingdom. Near the deepest chamber, Ash finally stopped. Before them stood an enormous circular door carved from black stone. At its center rested the symbol Lyra now recognized instantly. 2 wolves beneath a crescent moon. The same symbol, engraved upon her mother's pendant. She instinctively lifted the pendant from beneath her cloak. The silver charm grew warm in her hand. The massive door trembled. Stone groaned. Slowly, it opened. A wave of cool air washed over them. Inside lay a chamber unlike any other. There were no statues, no murals, only a vast underground lake glowing with soft silver light. In the very center rose a small island of polished white stone. Resting upon it, curled peacefully beneath streams of moonlight, slept the largest wolf Lyra had ever seen. Its fur shimmered like woven starlight. Its breathing moved the air itself. Even asleep, its presence filled the chamber with overwhelming peace. Kaelen whispered almost involuntarily, "The last guardian." Every story, every prophecy, every forgotten legend had led to this place. The giant wolf slowly opened its brilliant silver eyes. Unlike the others, those eyes held neither age nor sorrow, only endless kindness. Its gaze settled upon Lyra, then upon Kaelen. Finally it spoke. "The kingdom stands where it has stood before." Its voice sounded like moonlight flowing across water. "One path seeks power, the other seeks peace." Behind them, hurried footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Lady Seraphine burst into the chamber with a company of loyal soldiers, her face twisted with desperation. So it is true. She stared at the sleeping guardian with hungry eyes. This power should belong to those strong enough to command it. She raised an ancient crystal staff stolen from the royal archives. Dark energy surged toward the guardian. The chamber trembled violently. Ash sprang in front of Lyra with a fierce growl. Kaelen stepped between Seraphine and the guardian, raising his sword. "You've already destroyed enough." Seraphine laughed bitterly. "I saved this kingdom. For centuries we kept order. We gave Alpha's purpose. We kept Omegas beneath us because someone had to rule." "No," Lyra answered quietly. "You kept everyone afraid." Seraphine unleashed the staff's power. A torrent of black light rushed across the chamber. Kaelen intercepted the blast with his blade. The impact hurled him backward across the stone floor. His sword shattered. Rowan and the guards charged forward, locking blades with the rebel soldiers. Steel rang throughout the sacred chamber. The last guardian never moved. It merely watched, waiting, watching not strength, but choice. Lyra looked from the wounded Kaelen to the sleeping guardian, to Seraphine, to Ash. Then she remembered her mother's words. Protect them, not rule them, not command them. Protect them. She walked forward alone. Seraphine shouted, "Stop her!" Several soldiers rushed toward Lyra. Before they reached her, every ancient wolf above the palace howled together. The mountain shook, stone ceilings cracked. Moonlight poured into the hidden chamber through openings that had remained sealed for centuries. Lyra reached the island. She did not kneel. She did not demand power. She simply placed her mother's pendant upon the white stone and rested one gentle hand against the guardian's enormous head. "I don't want your strength." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I only want this kingdom to stop hurting." Silence. The great wolf closed its eyes. A single tear of silver light rolled down its face. Then, the impossible happened. Instead of bowing before Lyra, the last guardian gently lowered its head into her waiting hand. It had made its choice. A brilliant wave of moonlight exploded across the chamber. The black energy surrounding Seraphine dissolved instantly. Her crystal staff crumbled into dust. Outside the palace, every rebel warrior felt their weapons fall from trembling hands. The ancient wolf stood upon the city walls and raised one final united howl beneath the full moon. The rebellion was over. Kaelen slowly rose despite his injuries. He looked at Lyra not with awe, not with fear, but with quiet pride. She had never sought greatness. That was exactly why she had been worthy of it. Asterian's voice echoed through the chamber one last time. "The Moon Heart has remembered its keeper." As peace settled over the capital and the rebellion collapsed, Ash quietly tugged at the edge of Lyra's cloak. Without a sound, the little white wolf turned toward one final hidden passage beneath the chamber. At its end waited a forgotten grave, and within it, the answer Lyra had searched for her entire life. Silence settled over the hidden chamber after the last guardian chose Lyra. The battle was over. Outside the palace, the sounds of clashing steel had faded into distant echoes. The rebellion had collapsed almost the instant the Moon Heart awakened. Warriors who had marched beneath Lady Seraphine's banners now stood frozen, ashamed of the fear that had guided them. Within the sacred chamber, no one spoke. Only Ash moved. The little white wolf gently tugged at the edge of Lyra's cloak before trotting toward a narrow passage hidden behind the island. He paused once, looked back, waited. Lyra understood. There is one more place. Kaelen stepped beside her. Then we finish this together. Neither reached for the other's hand. They simply walked side by side. It was enough. The narrow passage curved deep beneath the palace until it opened into a quiet cavern unlike any they had seen before. No grand statues, no ancient murals, no crystal pillars, only a peaceful meadow growing beneath an opening in the mountain where moonlight poured gently onto the earth. Wild white flowers covered the ground. At the center stood 2 stone markers. No royal crests, no noble titles, only 2 simple names carved by careful hands. Lyra Ashvale, Lyra Ashvale. Lyra stopped walking. Her knees weakened beneath her. She could not finish the sentence. Ash quietly sat beside the graves. His playful energy disappeared. Even the little wolf seemed to understand this place deserved silence. Lyra slowly knelt before the stones. For years, she had imagined this moment, sometimes with anger, sometimes with desperate hope. Never like this. She placed her mother's pendant between the 2 markers. I found you. Her whisper broke into tears. I finally found you. The mountain answered. Soft silver light drifted upward from the earth surrounding the graves. The flowers swayed, although no wind entered the chamber. Then 2 familiar figures slowly formed within the moonlight. Not ghosts, not entirely living. Spirits woven from ancient magic. A woman with gentle silver eyes smiled exactly as Lyra had imagined throughout every lonely year. Beside her stood a tall warrior whose calm expression reflected quiet strength. Neither wore crowns, neither carried weapons. Only peace. My little moon, Meleese whispered. Lyra's breath caught, the voice from her forgotten memories. The lullaby she could never completely remember. It was real. Without thinking, she reached toward them. Her fingers passed through silver light. A tear escaped her mother's smile. I wish I could hold you. Lyra's own tears fell freely. I thought. Her voice trembled. I thought you left because I wasn't enough. Elian shook his head immediately. You were always enough. His steady voice carried the certainty of mountains. We left because you were everything. Meleese looked toward the last guardian's distant chamber. The moon heart could never fall into hands that desired power. So we became its keepers. We gave up our lives together. So that one day, she gently touched Lyra's forehead with a hand made entirely of light. You could live yours. Years of loneliness. Every whispered insult. Every birthday spent alone. Every cold winter wondering why no one came back. They melted beneath those simple words. Not forgotten. Healed. Lyra smiled through tears. I missed you. We know. We always knew. Behind her, Kaelen quietly lowered his head, allowing Lyra this final moment. He had lost his own father long ago. He understood that some reunions deserved witnesses, not interruptions. Ash curled peacefully between the graves, closing his bright silver eyes. For the first time since Lyra had met him, he looked completely at home. Meleese turned toward Kaelen. The kingdom entrusted itself to you. Kaelen bowed deeply. I will spend every remaining day proving worthy of that trust. Elian nodded once. Then never rule through fear. Rule, so your people never fear standing beside you. Kaelen accepted the words as though receiving a sacred oath. The moonlight surrounding the spirits slowly brightened. Their time was ending. Lyra's breathing quickened. No, please, not again. Meleese smiled softly. My brave girl, we are not leaving. She looked toward the sleeping ancient wolves beneath the mountain. We have always been here, in every guardian, in every howl, in every act of kindness. The wolves never truly leave. They simply wait until hope needs them again. Their forms began dissolving into streams of silver light. I love you, Lyra whispered desperately. Her parents smiled together. And we have loved you. Every single day. The light rose gently toward the opening above, then disappeared among the stars. Silence returned. This time, it no longer felt empty. Lyra remained kneeling for several moments before quietly standing. She wiped her tears, not because they had stopped, but because they no longer carried despair. They carried gratitude. As she turned, Kaelen stood waiting. There were no speeches, no dramatic declarations, only honesty. "You once said you had nowhere that felt like home." Lyra nodded. "I was wrong." Kaelen smiled, small, genuine, and rare. "I hoped you would be." He extended his hand. Not as a king, not as an alpha, simply as a man asking another to walk beside him. Lyra looked at the offered hand, then at Ash, who gave one approving wag of his tail. She laughed softly. "I think he approves. I've learned not to argue with him." She placed her hand in Kaelen's, not because fate demanded it, because she chose it. Together they walked back toward the palace. Spring arrived earlier than anyone expected. Snow melted from the mountains surrounding Moonveil Dominion, feeding clear rivers that carried life back into forgotten valleys. The wolf cemetery was no longer forbidden. Families visited openly, leaving flowers beside the sleeping guardians. Children laughed without fear as they listened to stories of the first pack, not stories rewritten by nobles, but the truth preserved by memory. The royal council changed forever. For the first time in the kingdom's history, healers, betas, artisans, and omegas sat beside alphas as equals. Leadership became responsibility, not privilege. Lady Seraphine and the remaining conspirators were stripped of every title and quietly exiled beyond the eastern mountains, remembered not with hatred, but as a warning of what fear could become when mistaken for strength. Every full moon, Lyra and Kaelen walked together through the cemetery. They never ruled from above. They ruled among their people. Ash always ran ahead, weaving between the enormous stone wolves as though greeting old friends. One peaceful evening, Lyra paused before Asterian's resting place. The great wolf had returned to stone, his duty complete. She placed fresh white flowers beside his paws. "Thank you," she whispered. A warm breeze drifted through the valley. Somewhere far away, a single wolf howled. Then another answered. Then silence. Lyra smiled toward the silver moon. She finally understood. The ancient wolves had never awakened because they needed a queen. They awakened because the kingdom needed someone who remembered that kindness was stronger than fear. She looked toward Kaelen. He smiled back. No crowns, no titles, only two souls who had chosen each other. Hand in hand, they continued down the moonlit path as spring flowers swayed gently around the sleeping guardians. Far beyond the borders of Moonveil Dominion, beneath untouched snow on a distant forgotten mountain, one lonely stone wolf slowly opened a single silver eye, and somewhere in the endless night, the old guardians began waiting once again.